All right, here's your review. Yeah, let's download it, hustle. All right. Now, again, it says refer to the figure below to answer the following questions. All right. Identify the plane parallel to BCD. So that would be obvious. It would be plane what? AFE. Plane AFE. All right. Identify the segment parallel to CD. FE. Everybody agree? Which segment is skew to DE? Is everybody okay with that? Again, parallel and skew. Remember, skew, the lines are not in the same plane. All right? And they're not parallel. They don't intersect. All right? Everybody good with that? All right, so let's continue on. All right? So angles 1 and 8 are called alternate exterior. All right. 3 and 7 are called what? Wait a minute. 3 and 7 are called what? I think it's corresponding. All right. Given AB is parallel, given A is parallel to B, and measure of angle 2 is 65, then measure of angle 6 would have to be what? I think it would be 65. Agreed? Now again, you can't say they are corresponding, all right? But again, I always try to remind kids that all of the acute angles are equal, all of the obtuse angles are equal, and they are supplementary. All right, now again, for some reason I'm being distracted. All right, I really don't mind. You can do it on your own. It's perfectly fine with me. Given A is parallel to B, measure of angle 3 is 5x plus 10. So let's look at angle 3 and let's look at angle 5. So they have to be what? They have to add up to 180. Thank you. So to add them up to 180 shouldn't be a difficult task. So we have what? 8x plus 20 equals 180.
X equals 20.
Now, what happens on the test tomorrow is that you have to make sure you answer the question, correct? Because I could have said, what's the measure of angle 3, or I could have said, what's the measure of angle 5, or I could have said, what's x? Everybody good on that? All right, so again, you have to make sure that you answer the right question. All right, so here we have x equals 20, and we're done, because it says find the value of x. All right, so here's another example. Which angle relationship justifies that L is parallel to M? If 1 and 7 are equal, does that make sense? No, because they are what? Vertical angles. Vertical angles don't prove that lines are parallel. What about angle 3 being congruent to 4? No, it doesn't say anything about linear pairs. Do you agree? Thank you. 4 and 5 are linear pairs. However, 6 and 8 are what? 6 and 8 are corresponding. If corresponding angles are congruent, the lines have to be parallel. All right? Now, if angle 2 is 6x plus 8, and angle 6 is 8x minus 6, find x so they're parallel. So what will have to be true about 2 and 6? They're equal. So 6x plus 8 has to equal 8x minus 6. So x equals what? Yes, thank you. X equals 7. Again, you're looking at this saying, what are we finding? All right, we're finding x. All right, we're finding x. So x is 7. Given measure of angle 6 plus the measure of angle 7 is equal to 180. So let's review again. 6 and 7 are what? Well, what is that? What's the name of?
Another consecutive.
Thank you. They are consecutive interior angles. They're consecutive interior angles. Anybody have any issues with that? All right. Now, determine the slope. Right? So we have slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I have 5 minus 0 over 0 minus 5, negative 1. Number 12, I have m equals 2 plus 4 over 1 plus 2, which is equal to 6 over 3, which is 2. All right. Yes, sir, go.
Go into notability. Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh yeah.
Okay, given the coordinates for AB and C, we need to figure out what coordinate would make it parallel. All right, so if we're finding the coordinates parallel, that means the slopes have to be the same. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the slope of AB. So the slope of AB is 7 minus 4 over 1 minus 8, which is negative 3/7. Is everybody good with that? Right? What? What's the difference? What's the difference?
Equals the same thing.
All right. Now, for CD, now we want it to be negative 3/7. So right off the bat, I have 310. All right. Now, I honestly think right now you have to just go through A, B, C, D. All right. Now, let me try to help you with this. What?
I do not understand why you switched.
I don't understand what.
Why you switched.
Oh,
7 to
it
4.
really isn't a big deal. Remember, we said there are going to be distractions. All right, it's not a big deal. We can interrupt. All right, and it's really not that funny. It's no reason to stop the class over. It's going to happen throughout the year. I promise. It really isn't that funny. And I'm expecting you guys to be good enough that when there's an interruption, it's not destroying our class. Go.
I don't understand.
It really isn't that funny.
I don't understand why you made it 4 minus 7 and 7 minus 4 is 4 minus 7.
I'm asking you, what difference does it make?
Where did we get negative?
It would make the top one negative and the bottom one positive. So is there a difference? You're right. There's no difference. I try to start off making it positive. Right? We've already had that discussion. It doesn't matter what point. Doesn't that make sense? Let me just draw a line just to show you what I mean. If I have this line and I have these 2 points and I say the slope here is 3. If I go up 3 and over 1, that is negative 3, negative 1.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't matter where you start. It's that you're consistent. You can't say, I'm going up and over, right? And you can't do, well, I'm starting at this point for the x's and starting at this point for the y's. You don't do that. right? You have to be consistent. So it makes no difference. All right. So now what I'm going to do is, because I'm trying to teach you how to be a better test taker now. So I don't want to have to go through and do all these points to get the right answers. Does everybody agree with that? So I want the slope to be what? We want it to be negative, right? Right? So if I want the slope to be negative, that means if the x goes up, the y is going to go what? Down. Is everybody with me? So I'm starting at 310. So if I go to 0.17, then I went from 3 to 0, so I'm going what? Down, and then I went what? Up, right? 7. So that's a negative possibility, right? Now, again, what you're trying to remember too is that your y is first. You with me? So I went from 10 to 17. So that means I went up what? So is that correct answer? No, not if my y values changes 3. So that would be 7/3, right? Not 3/7. That's what I'm trying to show you here. The slope, the change on the y has to be 3, and the change on the 7, or the change on the x has to be 7. Right? That's what we're trying to figure out. So I'm telling you, if you're starting at 310, right? I need the y movement to be 3. Right? So the y movement, 10, 7, or 13. All right? So if we go from 10 to 13, that was up what? Up 3. And then from 3 to 10 would be what? Up 7. So that would be a positive slope. That would be a positive slope. Is everybody with me on that? Right? So it's not D. So now if I look at C, right? From 10 to 7 is what? Down what? And then from 3 to 10 is up 7. Right? So are we agreeing that it's C? All right. And again, I think those are good, just quick little mental math problems. All right. Not difficult. All right. Now, so now we need perpendicular. So perpendicular, the slope has to be what? Negative reciprocals, right? So let's look at this one. So I need to find the slope of AB first. So the slope of AB is 4 plus 5 over negative 3. So again, that's negative 3. So just check and make sure you're good on that.
Why do you do Y1?
Alyssa, you hear him?
Question?
Yeah. Did you hear me what he said?
Yeah, why did you switch it?
Okay. Well, why is that annoying? You don't even know, right? Because you asked me that very same question.
Well, no, I mean, because
You asked me that same exact question, that's why.
it's going to equal out the same thing.
Right. That's exactly right. So again, listen, guys. It doesn't matter how you start. Personally, I just like to start out with a what? Positive.
But why did you teach us the opposite way?
I didn't teach you the opposite way. I wrote.
The y2 minus y1 over x2.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to make myself clear one more time.
No, I understand that you were saying but like, why split?
Okay, so in the original, Reagan, you're not giving me a chance to answer your question. I'm demonstrating right now, so you'll go, wow, okay, that just makes perfectly good sense. All right, I promise you. All right, so a line has 2 points. When you find the slope, you need what? 2 points. This right here is referred to as x1, y1. This point right here is referred to x2, y2. You with me? So I said the slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Agreed? Now, why do you think the mathematicians would do x2 minus x1? Because the second point, they're just differentiating the two, or they're separating the 2 points. If I decide to do y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2, they thought you would be smart enough to understand it means exactly the same thing. As I just drew a picture a minute ago, the rise over the run. This is delta y, this would be delta x. If I go the other direction, it's not the same, right? The reason it's not the same is because that would be what? Negative delta y, this would be what? Negative delta x. But if I write the ratio, negative delta y over negative delta x, and compare it to delta y over delta x, what is it? It's the same thing. So the point is, it doesn't matter if you do y2 minus y1 or you do y1 minus y2. It makes no difference. They're just points on a line. You'll always get the same slope. So now, just to point out to you how obvious it is, if I wrote -1, 4 down, and then I wrote 2, -5, and I figured out what the slope is. Okay, now, here's what some of you are asking me. Watch. Look up on the board. So if I put this over here, you want the slope to change. That's what you're telling me. No, I'm not saying you personally. It's a class thing. Right? You see how the silliness of that, right? It doesn't matter what point you start with. I tried to tell you over and over, I just like to avoid negatives when I can. So I immediately look at the two numbers, and I know I'm subtracting the y's. So I'm going to make the y always what? Positive. Right? That's all. It makes no difference. This is not the first point, and this is not the what? Second point. They're just what? 2 points. You can subtract them however you want to subtract them. And you'll always get what? The same answer. Right? And some people ask me a question, not you guys, but you know, my little algebra kids are doing the same exact stuff. If -3/4, that's different to them. Right? Because they don't understand what? A positive divided by a negative is a negative. Right? Whether you do positive first and negative second, or negative second and positive first. All right? It's the same. It looks different, I'm granting you that. Just like when you subtract them and you get a 7 and I get -7, you might say, wow, they're different answers. They're not different because the denominators will both be what then? Different. All right? Hopefully that makes sense now. All right? When you're finding a slope, it doesn't matter what order the points you do, but it must be consistent. Is everybody good on that now? All right? So now, let's let the fun continue. All right? So now my question is, for everybody, does everybody agree the slope was -3?
Yes.
So if the slope of AB is -3, I need the slope to be perpendicular. So the slope of the perpendicular would be what? Would be what? 1/3. It would be 1/3. Is everybody agreeing with me on that? So that means that delta y is moving what? Delta y is moving 1, and delta x is moving what? 3. That's how you should be kind of looking at it. All right? So my point here, C, is what? 3, 4. So my y is moving how much? And my x is moving. Is that an answer?
No.
No? So if you wanted to, instead of it being 1 and 3, it could be what? -1 and -3. Does that make sense? Now that still might not be the answer because there's a lot of slopes that are 1 to 3. Do you agree?
Yeah.
All right? A lot of points. So I'm just saying if delta y is -1, it would be what? 2. And then delta x would be what? I'm going 3, right? So again, hold up. Hold on, you're right. So from C, the X is moving 3, correct? So that would be what? 0. Right? And the Y would be 3. Do you agree? Which still is not a choice. All right? So now we just have to, it looks to me like we're just going to have to kind of look at all the possibilities. All right? I thought that's what they should do. All right? So from 3, 4. All right? If I thought the answer was 1, 2, let's see if that works. If it was A, all right? The change in Y, 4 minus 2 is 2, 3 minus 1 is 2. So is that the answer?
No.
No. So now 2, 1. Is that right?
Yeah.
So 4 minus 1 is 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. But we want it to be what? We want it to be 1 over 3, not 3 over 1. So that's out. So we're going to do 5, 2 now. We're going to try them all. Right? So 5 comma negative 2. So 6 over negative 2, which is what? All right. So that's still no good. So now let's do 6, 3, just to make sure they didn't make a mistake. 6, 3. So 4 minus 3 is 1. 3 minus 6 is negative 3. Wow. Yeah, they made a mistake. All right, unless I made a mistake with the slope. Did I make a mistake with the slope? 9 over negative 3 is negative 3. So the slope of the perpendicular would be 1/3. None of those came out to be 1/3. Do you agree? Right. So it was obviously choice E. No answer. All right. Okay. Sorry about that. That was not intended. All right. But still, you get the point. If they are perpendicular, the slopes would have to be the negative reciprocals. All right. So let's look at 15. All right. So now, for 15, we are writing the equation of line with slope 4 and y-intercept negative 3. Obviously, that is what?
C.
Is everybody okay with that? C, y equals mx plus b. All right. Which is an equation of line with slope 2 passing through the point 3, 1. So this is your point slope form. So y minus 3, right? And let's do it. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Right?
Yeah, wouldn't it be?
Y minus 1 equals 2 times x minus 3. You with me? All right. Now let's see if you remember how to do this.
To make a line.
All right. So lots of ways you're trying to find UVW right here. I'm agreeing with you probably. All right. Or we can do it mathematically. Because to me, you could draw that line right there. When you draw that line right there, right, this angle right here is going to be 42 degrees. Right? And then if this is 39, that's 39. So 81. All right, here we go. If AB is parallel to CD, so I would mark that, find X and Y. All right, so if this is 9 degrees right here, I would go ahead and mark these as 9 degrees. Everybody good with that? Yes. All right. Now, To me, this angle right here, right, would kind of be easy to figure out, right? That's x. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Right.
So would it be
Or yes, that's true. You could also say what? You could say that x plus 36 has to equal 90. Should I be okay with that? Because the angles of a triangle have to equal 180, right? So x has to equal what? X is 54, right? And if x is 54,
There's only one answer.
yeah, so we're done then. All right. But if we had to, because it's not all going to be multiple choice, then that angle would have to be 126. Do I agree?
And also the x down there would be
Equals y minus 6, right? So y is equal to 132. All right. Yeah.
and a quadrilateral and all that.
Exactly correct. All right, because you can separate it into two triangles.
Well, I think we can 90. That one too.
Okay, so here we go. So down here, it's the same principle. All right. So again, in my opinion, I think it would just be easier if we drew that in. Now, this, well, the problem with saying that though is the transversal is not all the way cut. These two aren't the same transversals, right?
Because above it we're 132.
No.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. The transversal, this transversal is not the same as this transversal. You with me on that? Okay. So, these are parallel, right? And they're all three parallel now. Right. So if this is 132, this angle right here has to be 132, right? Which means that this angle is actually what? 48 degrees, right? The other one has to make it, so this down here is 63. 63. Because 111 minus 48. You see, from here to here, watch. From here to here is 111.
Oh.
And you're trying to get this 48.
All right. Sam, is that all right now?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the slope of the line perpendicular to y equals 2? Undefined, right? Because y equals -2 is a what? Horizontal line. So that slope is 0. Right. So that would be perpendicular, agree? So the slope of the perpendicular is what? Undefined. Because it's a vertical line. Vertical lines cannot have a slope. Can't divide by 0. All right. So A, B, D, and C, D, E. So again, I would go ahead and highlight A, B, D, which is the bottom. And then C, D, E. It looks like C, D is the back. So we would say C, D. So now name a segment skew to BC. Now let's look at that carefully. All right. So, so I have BC is this right here. Yeah, I agree with you. It's either EA or what? ED. DA would be parallel. DA would be parallel. All right. So you could say ED or EA. All right. 5 and 13 are what? Corresponding. 7 and 12. Alternate interior. 9 and 16. Alternate exterior. Given that A is parallel to B, if 6 is 89 degrees, this is 89, then I'm trying to find angle 10, which is consecutive interior. All right, so it's 180. So that would be what? 91. Okay. All right. Given that A is parallel to B, 8 is 4x plus 10, and 12 is 7x minus 17. So is there a relationship between 8 and 12? They equal 180, right? So 11x. So 11x equals 187, so x is equal to 17, right? So now I have x equals 17, so now I have to figure out what y. So 11 and 12, or 11 and 8. 11 and 8 are what? The same, right? So 17 for x. 78 equals 3y, right? Yeah, 26. Everybody okay with that? Everybody all right with that?
Yeah.
All right. Determine the slope again. All right, I think we could jump ahead, but let's just write the formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I'm trying to see if there's a particular one that's more. No. All right. Now remember, parallel lines, slopes are what? Slopes are equal. Perpendicular slopes are negative reciprocals. All right. So all we're doing here is we're figuring out the slope of BT. So let's just do that real quick. The slope of BT is equal to 12 plus 4 over 5 minus 1. 16 over 4, thank you, is 4. Now we're going to do the slope of what? MV is equal to 3 minus 2 over negative 8 plus 4, which is 1 over negative 4. So they are what? Perpendicular, right? Anybody have any questions with that? All right, good. I'm listening quickly.
How do you know when to switch them? So I know why, but how do you know
Well, no,
why?
all I did was I said this. I didn't switch them. I looked at here and I looked at these. And I said, I made an observation. They're negative reciprocals. So because they're negative reciprocals, that means that they are, in fact, perpendicular. Right? You're calculating two slopes, and you're comparing the two slopes. All right? If they came out to be 4 and 4, again, they would be parallel. Anything else, it's neither. All right? So 34, job hotline service charges $25 plus 4% commission on the first months of earnings. If it finds a work for a client, write an equation that represents the total cost T to find a job through the hotline. All right? So your cost is what? Your cost, and let's write it in functional notation. Your cost, well, actually, sorry, the total cost they have is what? T, right? So it would be T with respect to what? I'm trying to show you now. Not that I really care, but I'm just trying to show you, like on the SATs, how the functional notation works, right? So let me just show you what this means. The total cost with respect to what? What's C? Commission. Is everybody with me?
Oh, like what we did with
Right. So the total cost is going to be what? $25 plus 4% commission. Right? Right. Commission is how much money you make for essentially selling something. Right? Like, listen, I can always tell who's working on commission and who's not. Like if I go in Starbucks, they don't care. Right? They're just as slow as if there's one person or there's 100 people in the store. Right? But to motivate my employees, you could say, look, the more sales you make, the more I'm going to pay you. Right? So what is that? An incentive. That's incentive for them to work as fast as they can, because the more money the business makes, the more money they make.
So say I'm working at Starbucks probably I get like a portion.
That's exactly right. You get a percentage from each coffee. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. But generally, commission is mostly for when you sell houses, or like a lot of times people selling cars make a commission.
The real estate agent gets
Right. You with me? All right. So in this case, it says the hotline charges $25 plus 4% commission. That means when they find you a job, right, they're going to take 4% of your salary. You with me? The first year generally is how that works.
Wow.
All right. So it says, write an equation that represents the total cost to find a job through the hotline. What is the cost if the client earns $1,500? Right? So he gets what? 4% of the $1,500 plus the what? Plus the $25. 0.04, right? All right, and then plus $25. All right, and that's no, because that means they're taking 96% of your pay. The question is not how much money the client makes, but how much money you get. Right.
Oh, okay.
Right, so you get 4% of the $1,500 plus the $25.
Oh, okay.
All right, but you're right. If I would have said how much money does the person make, the person just is going to make, $1,500 times 0.96. Right. All right.
I don't understand how you do this one.
All right. You still got some work to do, guys.
We have to do all of it.
Yeah. Well, the test is the quiz.